Hey, it's Trevor Emdon here again, and if you've been watching this little series of videos that I'm making about effortless personal success, then you might remember that in the last video I talked about the dream of living life on my terms, or in your case, it would be your terms. The true sense, I think, of what freedom is to do what you love, to not have to worry about money, to get the things you want. And what we do is we say that we can't for various what look like very solid reasons. And I want to talk a little bit about that today, because we say it's things like, well, it doesn't meet the needs of the family. My partner, wife, husband, spouse, whatever would not approve of it, would not support it. I don't have enough money. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have whatever. And I, too, got very, very caught up, like a fly in a spider's web, in those kind of beliefs, because they look really real. But let's peel them apart for a minute, because I'm now living on my terms. I've been doing it for a few years now, and it's getting better and better and better. When I first did it, there was no plan. There was no plan, definitely no plan B. There wasn't really a plan A, other than I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. And I did have some pieces in place that, in my head, that I thought I could use, but I wasn't really sure of them. Now I am sure, but they're not those pieces. Now I've done it, I'm able to look back. See, when it started to come together, I did that, and there were just 4 pillars, and they work every time. And now I know what they are. They always work. So let's just pick that apart for a minute. The idea that there's something in the way, and we can't because ... You fill in the blank. So, for example, if you've ever been in a state of fear, I want to ask you, has it actually stopped you from doing anything? Because there are people, for example, and I've worked in the field of mental health most of my life, and there are people who have or live in what appear to be, or what are labelled, some kind of anxiety state, sometimes for very long periods of time, sometimes for their whole life. And yet they still have a life. These people have jobs and families and function pretty much as everybody else. In fact, sometimes you can't even tell that they're having some kind of mental struggle. From the outside, you can't tell. Now, that doesn't mean that it's okay, or that what they're suffering is to be dismissed. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that anxiety and fear do not paralyze you. Now, I also can tell you that anxiety and fear are not necessary, but that's not for today. That's a different subject. So first of all, I want you to see that fear is not something that actually blocks you. Secondly, when we have a thought, let's take an example. Let's say that, okay, well, I'll take a very simple example from my own life, right? My wife loves fish. She would eat fish for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and tea if that was available, which sometimes it appears that it is. And I have had a lifelong dislike of fish. I think the smell and in a few cases I've tasted it, I just don't like fish. I never want it. I not only don't want it, I don't like it. So when she's thinking about a fish dish, she goes, oh wow, I'm gonna have fish, oh lovely, gonna have beautiful fish tonight. And I go, that's the same fish. Now, what is that? It's my experience versus her experience. I have no idea why I don't like fish. In fact, there are times when I wish I did like fish, because sometimes it's a nuisance not liking it. People offer it oh, come round for dinner, we're having fish. It's okay, I'll pass, thanks. Um, and there are places that we go in the world where it's famous for its fish and seafood and so on, and I don't want to try any of it, but I don't like it. It doesn't make me a bad person. Right? So all I'm saying is that one person's experience of something is not necessarily another's. And I'm using a very silly and trivial example of that to show you that reality is created in our own heads. What looks real to us on the outside is actually in our own heads. Now you might say, well, what difference does that make? Well, it makes all the difference in the world. Because when you know that, you are now able to say, well, in that case, if I'm creating it, then I could create anything else. The point is, we generally don't, because we get sucked in. We're creatures of habit. That's what it is. And habits of thought are easy. They make us able to function. You don't need, or I don't need, to have to think about how to make a cup of tea every time I go to make a cup of tea. I've made so many thousands of cups of tea in my life, I can make it on autopilot whilst thinking about other things and multitasking, doing whatever. We need that ability, driving a car, whatever. But it's not always helpful. It's not helpful when we're trying to make change or we'd like things to be different. And it's not helpful when we do it so automatically that we don't even know that we're doing it. We go, but that is how it is. There really is a brick wall in the way of my progress, and there is no way past it. And someone says, I've got a helicopter here. We could just fly over it. All right, okay. Now, that's a different view. That's a different possibility that you didn't see. So there's that. But there's one more layer here that I really want to get through to you. Because when you know that you're making it up, as it were, and it doesn't mean the situation, it doesn't mean the situation is there. The circumstances are there, but the situation isn't. Only your thoughts about the circumstances are there. Put two people in the same position. I went to a talk by Michael Neal, who's an author you should definitely check out. Michael Neal, Neill. I went to a talk he was giving in London, and he told a story about how he wanted to get a pedestrian crossing put in a very busy street where he and his family lived in London in the 1980s and 90s, I think. He's American. He had no idea how to get a pedestrian crossing put in a London street, and I'm British and I wouldn't know that either. But there came a point in the story where he approached the MP, and she said to him, you would need to come back to me with a petition with 1,000 signatures, a minimum of 1,000 signatures on it for me to consider this idea. Now, when he told that story, I was there, I was right in the front row, and my immediate reaction was, at that point I'd have given up. I don't know how to get 1,000 signatures. He'd only just moved to the area. He doesn't know the neighbours, and he doesn't know the country, right? And if that had been me, my reaction in that moment when he said that was, but he didn't say that. He said, so now I know that my next step is to get 1,000 signatures. I had no idea how to do that, he said. But he just went out with a clipboard and some paper, and, well, the pedestrian crossing is there now, suffice it to say. The 1,000 signatures came in an amazingly spectacular way. But I just want you to see that his head went to a place of, okay, let's see. And mine went immediately to a place of, that's almost impossible. Now, well, it probably wouldn't now because of that story. And that's why, maybe even if just one person watches me retell it in that very badly praised way, that might make you think, what else am I telling myself isn't possible? And the thing is that beneath all the thoughts that we have that we think are the truth, reality, is a wellspring of answers and ideas. The thing is, we don't trust ourselves to be able to put them into practice. We don't believe that just being who we are, doing things that feel like fun to us, is an okay way to live. Who's going to pay us for that? How's that going to put bread and butter on the table? I've had all of those thoughts. But actually, when you go just a little way in, it's not even difficult to get there. You see that you're endlessly resourceful and that there are people who want to know more and to be around you more and will pay you as well to do, not do, to be you. That's effectively what I'm saying here. Now, I know that this all sounds like it's bizarre. It's almost woo-woo, perhaps. It sounds like that to you. Depends on the lens you're looking at reality through. Some people watching this might be going, well, hey, I get that. Others will be going, this guy's talking out of his backside. And you might be anywhere between the two ends of that spectrum, maybe on another spectrum, I don't know. That's fine. I'm not asking you to believe me. I would like you to start experimenting with it, to see for yourself. Now, I realise that that takes a little leap of faith as well, possibly. But you don't have to do something drastic. I'm not telling you to quit your job. Just try putting something out there. Create something that expresses you. A poem, if you like writing poetry, or a piece of art, or some people embroider cushions or cakes, or make a video if that is your thing. We live in an age where it's not difficult to, you can post something on Facebook, right? But put something out there and see what response you get. I'm not telling you to ask for money for it. You can if you want, but at this point, I'm not saying that. We have endless resourcefulness. Now, one more point before I stop this. Just glancing at my notes over there. What happens as well when people start allowing themselves just a little inroad into this kind of thinking is that they say, but what if nobody likes it? What if it doesn't help them? What if it all goes wrong? And to that I say this. When was the last time you were accurately able to foretell the future? Because I don't think we do that. The truth, if you want a logical statistic, is that actually most of our plans do work. You plan a day out with the family, probably happens. You plan a weekend off, probably happens. I know sometimes things go wrong. The boiler packs up and you've got to get a plumber in and you were planning to go away and it always happens on a Sunday or a public holiday. Of course that sometimes happens. It happens to us all. But most of the time, things work out. You plan to get up in the morning and get ready for work and go to the office. And you do. You plan to book a table at a restaurant or go and see a movie. And you do. We don't even think of them as plans. They're so easy. Most things work out most of the time. Most of our appliances in our home, you press a button, switch them on, whether it's the TV, the iron, the cooker, whatever, the shower, and they work most of the time. Most things are all right most of the time too. Statistically, the world is not falling apart. Most countries are not at war. Most people will live to a ripe old age and die peacefully in their sleep. The drama that we see in the media and so on is the exceptions. The exceptions to the rule of most things are all right most of the time. That stuff's not reported because it's so boring. But it's actually amazing. So, your life is mostly okay most of the time. I guarantee it. I know it's true. You wouldn't even be watching this video if that wasn't true. If you were holding on for dear life by your fingernails in some way, you would not be right there now in front of whatever device you're watching me on, having that experience. You wouldn't. So that's just statistically. But there's far more to you than a statistic. Your uniqueness is what you're here to express. Trying to box yourself in to a job that you don't like, to conform to patterns of behavior that don't suit you, and so on. I'm not saying we should all be feral, wild. Of course not. We want to be part of the tribe. But there's lots of happy, exciting, fun ways to be that. And there's only one way that you can be, even if you change it many times. There's still only one you. And one final thought. Nobody ever attends a funeral and remembers how much money somebody had, or what their waist size was, or how many hours they spent at the office. They remember the effect that the person had on them. They remember how much fun they were, how generous they were, how giving with their time they were, how they even made a cup of tea. I went to a very, very beautiful tribute to a friend who passed recently, and one of the things that was remembered in one of the eulogies was how this man used to make tea properly, the person said, in a teapot with tea leaves and so on. And it made him smile. And those are the kinds of things that people remember. What are you waiting for? You're waiting for fear to pass. And that's not a reason to be waiting. So, in the next video, I'll talk more about how the 4 pillars, I'll tell you more about what they are, and how they guarantee success. You cannot fail when you know the 4 pillars. So stay tuned and for the next video in this series, and I'll let you know when that's up in a day or two. See you then.